Okay, I've got an issue with the yellow rose. Let me explain what's happening. Let me get inside and explain what's happening. First of all, I just want to know this goes underneath the steering column, and then over this top right here goes the plastic dash that holds all your instrument panels. A long time ago, this is just sort of a reminder, I fabricated and heat welded in with this, plastic welded, a couple of metal mesh tabs. So it goes in like that, and then it screws on underneath there. There's two screws. And so that covers up the bottom of the steering column. And they've held okay. I mean, you don't see them, but it holds this in and keeps it from flopping around kind of like that when you're driving down the road. All right, now let's get to the issue. This will take a little bit of explaining. So I've had something going on for a little while now, and there's my plastic dash that's off right here. There's my collar that goes around right here, and then this here was screwed in up here, and I just slid it down a little bit because what I want to get to is this little lock mechanism rod. This rod goes down to what is called an ignition switch. When you turn the key any which way, you could probably see it here just move a little bit as I turn the key. Now this is a cylinder lock, okay? This is replaceable. I'd have to take the steering wheel off to do it, but it's a little sloppy. So this is what was happening. I would start up the yellow rose, and what would happen is I'd have lights, I'd have radio, horn, everything pretty much worked except the fan down here and the blinkers. The hazards, which is right here, worked. The blinkers did not. I shut it off. I'd move the key to the on position, not starting it. The fan would work, the blinkers would work. I'd start it. Once again, the fan didn't work down there. The blinkers did not work. Then I was driving home thinking, okay, you know, I must be aground. So I got out and looked around at all. Actually, before I started driving home, I got out and looked around for the grounds. All the grounds looked okay. I mean, nothing looked out of place, nothing rusted or corroded over, that type of thing. And so what I ended up doing was starting it up, driving it home. Blinkers didn't work, fan didn't work, and then I hit a bump right before, like a low curb just before my driveway. Truck died, totally died. Started it right up, drove it up, parked it, kept it running. Blinkers didn't work, fan didn't work. Then I bumped the key right here, just slightly bumped it, and everything turned on. The blinker started working, the fan started working, everything else worked. Those were the only two things that really went out. So I thought it was the cylinder lock here because it's kind of sloppy, and on my Bronco I just replaced it because it was very sloppy too. So I thought, yeah, you know, there's something going on here. It must be this and only this. Well, what I didn't think about was down in here, I mean, you can barely see it. The little gray plastic thing down in here, I can almost put my finger on it. This rod right here is connected to that. When you move this key, it unlocks your steering wheel and also moves a position on that ignition switch. That ignition switch will pretty much run everything. Out of that ignition switch comes all of your ability to have electrical things work, windshield wipers, radios, fans, blinkers, all that stuff. If it's out of whack in some way, or if it's faulty, then certain things won't work. So what I have to do is, I've just got this prepped. I'm going to have to drop the column down. There's two bolts, one here, one here. Remember, this is a 1980 F350 manual drive not automatic. Power steering, of course, but manual shift. And so drop it down a little bit, and I've got a new one on the way, and I'll show you what I do when I get there. That's the first thing I'm going to change out, is that. Now, I may, because I just don't like this here, I don't like this being sloppy. And I'm going to bet this is original. And I bet you anything that down there is original too. You can just barely see it on the rod here that runs off the key. It runs up and down. As a matter of fact, if I move this rod, see what it's doing to the key? So it could basically just be that down there, but this, it seems to me, I'll probably do both, to be honest with you. But the first thing I'm going to do is that down there, because I want to keep the steering wheel on in case I have to drop the steering column all the way. What I'm going to do is what I did with the Bronco. I'm just going to let it rest on the seat, and that'll give me complete access to everything down there. Now, I just replaced this, if you remember. I just replaced the blinkers, this switch, which is underneath the steering wheel. But what I'll have to do is I'm going to have to lube all this up, make sure it's in good condition, you know, doesn't have any stress on it. Clean it up, and then lube it up a little bit with some probably white lithium in this. But I'll do some contact cleaner in there first, and then get back and then drop these 2 screws out as far as I can. See if I can't get to it just by doing that. But if I can't, I'm going to drop the whole column down, and hopefully it'll sit here. This is not a tilt steering wheel, so it's quite possible it might hang up a bit here, but I'm not positive. So it's possible there's a little bearing in here with a joint that'll allow it to come down. Anyway, I'm not sure yet. So anyway, that's what I'm doing on this. That was the cause of it. I'm pretty sure it's what the ignition switch, not necessarily the cylinder key lock. Okay, all right. Anyway, hang loose. We'll get to this when I get the parts in. Okay, I have the steering wheel dropped. 2 screws here. They are, I think, 7/16 screws. And then you can see right there, there's our little unit we have to get at. 2 7/16 bolts. So these are 9/16 bolts. So 2 7/16 bolts here, and then I can get at this and get that off. And what you do is when you unbolt it, you lift it kind of straight up and out, and then I'll have to finagle with getting the thing unplugged. Okay, so on to that one. So before you take off the ignition switch, you got to take off the negative battery cable just to be safe. Just to be safe. And I have the new one in. It just lifted right off there. So you can see, there it is right there. It just lifted right off. And on the new ones, there's usually a little pin that locks the position in place, because you want your key in lock. And that's the position that the old one came off in. This was locking with a little peg on the end. It sort of steps up off this rod here. It's just a little nub. It goes into that switch and moves it back and forth. So this locks it in place. So it just slid right on and went right in. So now I'm going to tighten down the bolts, and I'm going to put the steering column back up. And which reminds me, I should state this, because mine is a straight steering wheel, it comes down, it goes all the way to the shaft through the wall back there. So I had to put this down here to keep it lifted up a little bit, because it won't hit the seat. So that was enough room for me to get in there and get those 2 bolts. So now I'm going to screw those down and get this lifted back up and screwed in. And then I may take care of the switch here, which is, as you can see, a little loosey-goosey. So the next thing to do is take off the steering wheel so I can get to the cylinder lock. And this is a 15/16 bolt, and then we'll pull it. There's only 2 screws that hold on the horn and the center piece here that says Ford on it right in the center. So we'll take this off. I'll take it off with a small impact wrench. And then the horn leads just sort of clip into here, these 2 sides. It's not, you can't mix it up. So anyway, I'll try and get this off, and then we'll get to the cylinder lock. Okay, there's a couple things you do here. First thing you do is you turn this to on, not start, but just on, because that will release. There's a little notch in there, a little what do you call it, a peg that you have to press in, and it only presses in and releases the cylinder lock like this if you turn it to this position. But I'm gonna also have to clean this up a little bit, which I'm gonna do first, and lightly lubricate it so you know, it slides back and forth and works well. So I'm going to do that first, then I'm going to get the cylinder lock out. Okay, once you get the little nub there pushed in, it was a little difficult for me because it's never been removed, it doesn't seem like. Go in here and clean this out. A little bit of contact cleaner. I'm using WD-40. It was on sale, so I mean, it was a screaming deal, so I got it. Then you're going to lube up with a little bit of white lithium grease the new part on the end, and then just slip it in until the little nub there shows up, and then just turn it to lock. Okay, one other thing that you need to do when you bring this back into lock, you can see my little pin has come back and it's locked in. You have to push this right here, which releases this up here, that little thing that's moving, so you can pull this all the way back to lock. Because otherwise, you know, it drops down like that, and then you need to, see that right there? You need to move this back so it comes up and locks the cylinder into place, and you can pull the key out just like that. Okay, so make sure you do that after you put the new cylinder lock in and get it seated with that pin. It'll push right out when you turn it to lock. Okay, if you do not push this in or bring this up a little bit right here, you won't be able to move your key to lock. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it to on, and I'm going to lube this up with a little bit of white lithium spray, and then we're going to put everything back together. Okay, this is the moment of truth. You can see here my key is not really wobbly as much as it used to be. There's always a little bit of play in them, but mine was really, really loose. So this one here is tight, and I now have blinkers, both sides. Of course, I have the radio. I always had the radio, remember. So,
whether that's my parents.
But I did not have the fan, which, as you can see, now I do. So what was the cause of this? I wouldn't call it the cylinder lock, although I replaced mine because it was loose and I wanted to tighten it up, and it looked like it was original. It was that ignition switch down there on the steering column. So everything is back in nice and tight, and I'd call this a yes, it's fixed, hang loose. Oh, I'll put part numbers in the, if you're looking to do this for your, actually, to be honest with you, this part goes from 1980 to 1996. I'll put the part number in the description and link it, and I will also do the cylinder lock. One thing I will say about the cylinder lock is this. The cylinder lock, there's a cheap version, they call it the economy version, and there is the standard replacement. I got the standard replacement, and because the cheap version, which is only a few pennies less, maybe $1 or $2 less, has trouble fitting into the lock itself. There we go. I had to get that choke off of there. And so it fit in there perfectly, no issues. Some people report that they have issues putting the cylinder lock in. I had absolutely none. And that is because I bought the standard replacement. It's the upgrade from the economy version, and I'll link that in the description as well. Okay, all right, hang loose. The yellow rose is back and running again.